My name is Olivia Emma. I'm 31, and I work as a senior analyst in Phoenix, Arizona. Last July, I returned from a week-long conference, pulled my suitcase up the front walk, and discovered my clothes stuffed into trash bags in the hallway, while a gleaming new keypad lock sat on my master bedroom door, and my younger brother's gaming headset echoed from behind it. My parents were at my kitchen table, sipping coffee I'd bought, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. Taking my bedroom was only their opening move. By the end of that summer, my family would stake a claim to half my house as their personal territory. And my response would put all four of their names on a court docket in front of a judge, where being related counts for exactly nothing. Welcome back to Zarabell Stories, where quiet people finally draw their lines, and families learn that love is not a lease. If you've ever been the one who gives until it hurts, the responsible one, the one who always pays, this story is going to feel familiar. Drop a comment below, tell me where you're listening from, and be sure to subscribe because you'll want to hear how this one ends. Let me back up because you need to understand what that house meant to me. It's a 4-bedroom craftsman in a quiet suburb with a porch swing and a maple tree that turns brilliant orange every October. I bought it 2 years ago when I was 29. No help, no cosigner. I started working internships at 19, writing code, while my roommates went to parties, and I saved like it was my religion. The down payment took 10 years of skipped vacations and a car with manual windows. I'm not complaining. I'm explaining the math because my family never did that math. In my family, I've been the fixer since I was a teenager. When my older brother, Derek, buried himself in credit card debt, I paid it off. When my dad's car broke down the same month as his water heater, I covered both. When my mom wanted a family reunion at a lake house, I booked it and nobody asked the cost because nobody ever asks the fixer. I minded less than I should have. Being useful felt like being loved. I hadn't yet learned the difference. But this house was different. It was the one thing that belonged to me and only me. My name alone on the deed. My key in the lock. On Saturday mornings, I drink my coffee on that porch swing in total silence, and that silence belonged to me too. I got exactly 2 years of that. Then one Tuesday in February, my mother called with a voice like warm honey and said the sentence that started everything. "Honey, we need a little favor." Here was the favor. My parents had sold their ranch house because the stairs had become too much. They'd put a deposit on a new condo in a 55-plus community, with a builder promising an April closing. That left about 6 weeks of a gap. On top of that, my dad was scheduled for knee replacement surgery in March, and their rental options with a walker were limited. My mom laid it out sweet and simple. "Just till the condo's ready, honey. You've got all that room." And look, I'm not a monster. He's my dad. Of course they could come. But I'd watched enough family arrangements curdle to know that temporary is the most dangerous word in the English language. So I did what I do at work when a project has fuzzy edges. I wrote it down. I sent my parents an email that night, friendly as a greeting card, with terms in plain sight. They'd take the guest room and the hall bath. We'd split utilities. I put a date on it. 8 weeks, a buffer past the builder's promise, with a line saying we'd revisit if the condo slipped. I read it twice before hitting send, feeling equal parts smart and guilty, the way you do when you make family sign at the door. My mother replied 4 minutes later with a single red heart emoji. At the time, I took that as a yes. I know better now. A heart emoji is not a yes. It's a door you left unlocked. They moved in mid-March, 2 days before my dad's surgery. The first week was fine. I drove him to the hospital, kept my mom calm in the waiting room, and set up the guest room with a shower chair and pill organizer. This is what family does, and I was glad to do it. The rearranging started in week 2. I came home from the office, and my kitchen had been reorganized. Pots where the bowls lived, my good knives hidden in a drawer, because that's how a kitchen should flow. My coffee maker got demoted to the pantry to make room for my mom's percolator. Then my dad's recliner arrived from storage. A bulky brown thing that landed in my living room like a meteor aimed at a television that now never turned off. News in the morning, westerns all afternoon, volume set to hurricane. I'd come downstairs at 6 in the morning, and the house already smelled like bacon and sounded like a rerun. Small things, grain of sand things. I let them go one by one because my dad was healing, and the finish line was April. Then April arrived, and the builder called, and the closing slipped to June. Supply issues, they said. Everybody has supply issues. My mom relayed the news with a strange little brightness. Looks like you're stuck with us a bit longer, sweetheart. That night, I updated my calendar and told myself 8 weeks had always been the realistic number anyway. Then on a Sunday, I was hauling laundry past the guest room and overheard my mom on the phone with my aunt. "You should see what we've done with our house," she said. Our house. I stood in the hallway holding a basket of towels and let even that go. Almost. In May, I lost my office. It happened politely, the way everything in my family happens right up until it doesn't. My dad's physical therapist recommended a stationary bike, and my mom decided the only possible location was my first-floor office, the one room where I could shut a door and earn the money that paid for everything. I work from home 3 days a week. I said that clearly. My mom smiled like I'd said something adorable and moved my monitor to the dining room table. "You're young, honey. You can work anywhere." So for the rest of the spring, I took video calls at the dining table while a western thundered behind me and a percolator burped like a swamp. I'd mute myself to say, "Mom, I'm presenting." And she'd stage whisper, "Don't mind me," while unloading the dishwasher one clanging pan at a time. I want to be fair. My dad did his exercises. He got stronger. By early June, he was driving again and taking the stairs like a man 10 years younger, which meant if anyone had asked, the medical reason for any of this was over. Nobody asked. I circled the end of June on my mental calendar and promised myself a reckoning. A kind one, with pie, but a reckoning. Then one evening, my phone rang, and the screen said Derek. I remember standing very still at the counter before I picked up. My brother never called me. He hadn't called on my birthday in 3 years. Derek only ever called when something was broken. This time, the broken thing turned out to be his entire life. Derek is 35, 4 years older than me. Until April, he was a production supervisor at an auto parts plant. The plant cut a third of its staff, and Derek was in that third. He'd hidden it for 2 months, letting the severance burn while he told his wife that things were in motion. She was 4 months pregnant. Their apartment lease was up in June, and their landlord wanted a renewal signed or the keys back. All of this came out in one long phone call in which my brother never once said sorry or please. What he said was, "So, we're thinking we'll just set up at your place till the baby comes." Mom already said it makes sense. I looked at the wall for a second. I said very carefully that I was sorry about the job, that we'd figure something out, and that I needed to think about what was possible because I had a full house already. That's not a no, you'll notice. I've replayed it 100 times, and it still wasn't a no. It was a let me think from a woman trained her whole life never to say the other thing. That Friday, I flew to Seattle for a 4-day conference. Sunday night, my phone buzzed in the hotel. It was a text from my best friend who lives 3 streets over, saying, "Random question. Did you know there's a U-Haul in your driveway?" I stood at that hotel window looking at the skyline, doing the time zone math, and I understood that whatever I decided no longer mattered. My mother had already opened my front door. I got home Monday night to a house that had been colonized. Derek's truck sat in my spot on the driveway. The second guest room, the small one I used for my treadmill, was packed to the ceiling with their belongings, and the overflow filled half my basement. His wife, sweet-voiced and very pregnant, hugged me at the door and said the drive was brutal. Derek hugged me too, loud and boisterous, like this was a reunion I'd won. "There she is, Olivia Emma." My mother stood behind them, beaming like she'd pulled off a surprise party. "Family shows up for family," she said, and squeezed my arm. "I want you to know I didn't just smile and swallow it. I said in front of everyone that this was not what I'd agreed to, that I'd said I needed to think, and that 6 weeks was the absolute ceiling while they found their own place. Relax, it's temporary." "You sound like a landlord." Derek waved me off with a laugh. Everyone chuckled at that, even my dad. And the conversation moved on to nursery colors, like weather had passed through. Later that night, I carried a box up from the entryway and noticed the label written in Derek's blocky Sharpie. It didn't say kitchen stuff, or bedroom stuff like normal moving boxes. It said Master Closet. I stood there holding it, listening to my brother laugh at something on the TV, and a cold little fact walked into my head and sat down. He hadn't packed that box for a visit. He'd packed it for a house. He already considered it his. Let me tell you what temporary costs. My mortgage runs $2,380 a month with taxes and insurance. That was mine. I signed for it. But by July, the utility bill for a house with 5 adults worth of laundry and showers came to $610, nearly double my normal bill. The groceries I bought on Sunday were gone by Thursday. Nobody chipped in unless I asked. And when I asked, my mom acted like I'd passed a collection plate at a funeral. The utility split from my email was never mentioned again. Every time I raised it, some emergency bloomed. Derek's job search consisted of a gaming headset and the phrase, "I'm doing consulting," delivered from my couch at 2 in the afternoon. He stayed up until 3 every night in the living room, which shares a wall with the small bedroom. So I fell asleep to gunfire from a video game and woke up to my mother's percolator. Meanwhile, his wife had begun nesting. In my office, she taped paint swatches to the wall next to my dad's exercise bike and talked about when this would be the nursery in the same tone you'd use for a settled fact. I started staying late at the office. And on bad days, I'd sit in my car in my own driveway, eating takeout in the dark because it was the only room I had left. 20 minutes of quiet, then in through my own front door like a guest. I kept telling myself it was 6 weeks. I had no idea that upstairs, they were already measuring my bedroom. In late June, I called a house meeting. I typed up a 1-page plan with chores on a rotation, a utility split, and a move-out target of mid-August. I set the pages on the table in front of my whole family and watched my brother read the first line and start to grin. "She made us a PowerPoint," he said. My mother laughed before she caught herself. Then she did the thing she does where she puts her hand flat on the paper and says, "Sweetheart, we don't do contracts in this family. We take care of each other." My dad studied his placemat like it held instructions. His wife said the baby was making her tired, and that somehow became the closing argument. Nobody signed anything. The pages ended up under a pizza box by 8 o'clock. That night, I did something small that turned out to matter. I opened my phone and started a note, writing down the date, what I'd proposed, and what was said. Quietly, a habit was born. 10 days later, I flew to Seattle again. That was the last night I ever spent in my own bedroom. You already know the scene I came home to. I rolled my suitcase up the driveway, let myself in, and climbed my stairs. In the hallway sat 4 trash bags with my name on them, my clothes folded by hands that were not mine, my nightstand dumped into a freezer bag. On my master bedroom door, where there had never been a lock, there was a shiny new brass knob with a keyhole. I knocked. My brother opened it the way you'd open it for a delivery driver. Shirtless, easy. Behind him, I could see diaper boxes stacked on my bed. "We figured you wouldn't mind. You're barely here anyway. And she needs the bathroom at night. Pregnancy stuff." I stood in my hallway and heard myself ask where my parents were. "Kitchen," he said, and went back to his game. My parents were at the kitchen table. The second I walked in, my mother's eyes darted toward the ceiling and then back to her cup. They hadn't been ambushed. They'd helped him carry the boxes. They knew. What followed was the conversation that taught me who my parents were. I kept my voice level and said that Derek and his wife had taken my bedroom and installed a lock, and all of it would be undone by the weekend. My mother folded her hands and explained patiently. "She's pregnant. She needs the master bathroom at night." I pointed out calmly that the small bedroom and the master are on the same floor, 4 steps apart. There was a pause. Then my mother switched arguments without blinking. "He's going to be a father. A father needs to feel like a man in his own space." His own space. In my house. I looked at my dad, who once drove 4 hours in an ice storm to change my tire. He studied the newspaper like it had asked him a question. He didn't say a word. That silence had a weight I can still feel. I said the room would be returned by Sunday, or we had a serious problem. And from the staircase behind me, my brother's voice came down pleasant as a weather report. "Or what?"
Just that.
He wasn't angry. He was curious. The way you're curious about a bug on its back. I stood in my kitchen and realized I didn't have an answer. And he knew it. That Sunday, my family threw a dinner to announce how they were dividing my house. My mom made a roast. And when the plates were cleared, Derek stood up at the head of my table and delivered what he called the family plan. Their growing family needed real space, so they'd keep the master. My office would become the nursery. They'd take the living room in the evenings and half the garage. Basically, the upstairs and front half is our personal space, he said, drawing a line in the air. And you've still got your room and the kitchen since you're the cook. He grinned like he'd paid me a compliment. I waited for my parents to laugh, because it was hilarious. A man with no job and no lease, standing in a house he didn't own, awarding himself half of it. My mother nodded. His wife passed around her phone with a Pinterest board of the nursery. My father looked at paint colors for a room being confiscated and said they were nice. I said one thing, Derek, this is my house. And my brother looked at me with genuine, unbothered warmth and said the sentence I will hear for the rest of my life. Come on, Olivia. It's not stealing if it's family. Nobody flinched. I excused myself, went up to the small bedroom, and sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop. That night, I stopped arguing with my family. I started reading Ohio law instead. Here's what I learned first. What my family was doing to me was mostly legal, and what I wanted to do back was mostly illegal. The week after the dinner, Derek annexed the garage. I came home to find my mower, my Christmas bins, and my kayak on the lawn like evicted tenants, replaced by his workbench. That was the day I called the police non-emergency line. A patrol officer came out, listened to everyone, then took me aside and gave it to me straight. My parents and brother had been living there for months. They got mail there. That made them residents of the home, regardless of whose name was on the deed. If I changed the locks, I'd be the one breaking the law. Ohio calls that an illegal lockout. The way this works, he said, almost apologetically, is you have to evict them formally, like any landlord. Evict. The word dropped into my quiet street like a stone through a window. Evict my own parents. He shrugged. Civil matter, ma'am. I'm sorry. So understand my position. The law protecting my house was the same law protecting the people taking it. Every fast, satisfying option you're yelling at your screen would have handed my brother a lawsuit with my name on it. The next morning, I did something small that turned out to be the hinge of my whole life. I took a red folder and filled it with the deed, the closing documents, the email I'd sent my parents, and the heart emoji reply, the utility bills before and after, photos of the new lock, of my kayak on the lawn. 10 minutes of quiet paperwork. Then I walked out to my car, opened the trunk, and laid the red folder flat in the wheel well. My documents were safer in a parking lot than in my house. On my lunch break, I called a law office downtown. A lawyer with sharp reviews named Rachel Voss. She went through my red folder page by page and gave me the bad news first. There would be nothing fast about this. My family were tenants at will, people living in a home with the owner's permission, paying nothing. Getting them out legally was a staircase with no elevator. Step 1. Written notice terminating permission, 30 days. Step 2. A 3-day statutory notice. Step 3. Filing an eviction lawsuit, then a hearing, then if I won, a writ on my own front door. 8 to 12 weeks. Her retainer was $2,500. Then she gave me the good news. Sole title, no lease, no rent ever paid. Legally, this is the cleanest case I'll see this month. Emotionally, it's the worst kind I do. She capped her pen and looked at me. Almost nobody serves their own mother. Are you sure? I told her I needed one more week to give my family one last chance. A week later, I put an offer on the table. Mom and Dad could stay until the condo was ready, no deadline, if they backed me on one thing. Derek and his wife needed their own place before the baby came. To make that happen, I'd hand him $2,000 for a deposit and cover the movers. All I wanted was my bedroom back, my office back, and a date. I watched my brother listen with a small, patient smile. Then he made his counteroffer. The smart play was for me to sell him half the house at the old value because I'd be gouging my own brother otherwise. Or simpler, I could just add him to the deed. For the baby's stability, It's one signature, Olivia. I said no. Just that word. Nothing softening it. Maybe for the first time in my adult life. Into the silence, my mother set down her coffee cup and said quietly, "Don't make us choose, Olivia. You won't like it." That night, I sat in my car and signed Rachel's retainer agreement against the dashboard. My hands didn't shake at all. That's the part that scared me. Before I tell you about the notices, my family didn't wait quietly. The group chat lit up. Somehow the story was not Derek moved in and demanded half my house. It was Olivia is threatening to put a pregnant woman on the street. My aunt called to remind me that I had so much. My mom's church added us to the prayer list. His wife started posting videos with captions like, "Some people value square footage over blood." My mother moved through my house repeating my brother's line. "It's not stealing if it's family." The one person who saw it straight was my Aunt Debbie, who called and said, "They pulled this on your Aunt Ruthie back in the 90s. A house makes people forget whose name is on it." Then she sighed and said she loved me but couldn't be in the middle. I stopped explaining myself after that. But that same week, I opened my mailbox and found the envelopes that changed everything. My mailbox was full of other people's lives. Derek's car insurance renewal, a credit union statement, and on top, an official confirmation that mail forwarding for Derek and his wife had been activated to my address. The forwarding had been set up in May. They moved in June. My brother had rerouted his entire paper life to my address before I'd even given him an answer. I walked inside and set the stack in front of him. Asked him quietly what the date on that forwarding order meant. And my brother said, "It means I know my rights, little sister. Residency. You can't just throw family out." He tapped the counter twice and walked back to his game. There it was. No accident. He'd researched occupancy law before he ever loaded the U-Haul. The takeover wasn't a family falling on hard times. It was a plan, and I was the last to know. He was right about one thing, though. I couldn't just throw them out, but just was about to do a lot of heavy lifting. On July 28th, I served them. Rachel prepared 4 written notices, one for each of them, terminating permission in 30 days. Copies went by certified mail, but I decided my parents would hear it from me. My best friend stood by the counter as my witness while I cooked dinner for 6 like any Thursday. When the plates were cleared, I set an envelope in front of each of them and said, "I love you, and in 30 days, this stops being your address." My mother read 2 lines and came up out of her chair with a sound I'd never heard. Half sob, half fury. She said I was doing this to my own mother. His wife cried into her glass. My brother didn't even read his all the way. He held my eyes, smiled, and tore it in half. I heard Rachel's flat voice in my head. "Torn paper is still served paper." My father read every word, front and back, slow. Then he folded it, tucked it into his shirt pocket, and quietly started clearing the dishes. My mother screamed. My brother laughed. My father put his eviction notice away like a receipt. I couldn't tell yet which one of them would break my heart. There was one moment when I nearly surrendered. It was 10 days after the notices. I came down at 2 in the morning for water and saw light under the garage door. I found my brother sitting on a paint bucket, turning something over in his hands. His old plant badge. He didn't hear me at first, and for a second, I saw him the way he must see himself at 2 in the morning. 60 job applications deep. Wife due in November, sleeping in a bedroom his little sister paid for. When he noticed me, he said to the floor, 15 years I gave that place. Then quieter, the truest thing he ever said. "You weren't even trying to beat me, Olivia. That's the part one can't live with." Standing there in my bathrobe, I felt the ground tilt. I thought about tearing up the notices. Pity is quicksand. I was in it to my knees. Then morning came, and Derek walked past me, tapped my head like a kid's, and said, "Sleep okay in your little room?" The window closed. But my parents had one more card, and it nearly worked. The second week of August, my father had chest pains at dinner. Gray face, hand on his sternum. We called 911. I followed the ambulance. In the waiting room, I was nobody's plaintiff. I was a daughter doing bargains with God. It turned out to be angina, stable, no procedure needed. My mother looked at me and said, I hope it was worth it." The stress of what you're doing, this is what it does. For about a minute, she had me. Apologize. Fix it. Pay whatever it costs. Then a voice from across the room, my parents' old neighbor, came over and said, Patricia, congratulations on the condo. Saw the crew finishing your unit back in early July. You settled in yet? Early July. I watched my mother's face. The condo hadn't slipped. It had been ready for over a month. They could have left before I ever printed a notice. They'd sat at my table letting the delay story stand because my mother wanted the whole family under one roof when her grandson arrived. Don't make us choose, she told me. They'd chosen before I ever asked. The 30 days ran out. Nobody packed. The deadline passed like a dare. Derek threw a barbecue in my backyard, holding court in a lawn chair. He caught my eye and raised his soda. Can an inch. Your move, little sister. On Tuesday, September 2nd, I made my move. Rachel had the 3-day notices ready. I handed one to each of them and taped a copy to the front door. My mother took hers and shut the door. Derek read his, snorted, and said, You won't do it. You've never once followed through on anything that made Mom cry. He handed it back like a flyer. He was betting on the old Olivia. What he didn't know was that the old Olivia died in a hospital waiting room. On Friday, September 5th, I drove to the courthouse. Out of my trunk came the red folder. 20 minutes later, I was filing a forcible entry and detainer action. The clerk stamped it. Thornton versus Thornton. The hearing was set for September 23rd. When the summons arrived, my family finally believed me. My mother went quiet and called her pastor. Derek went on offense, announcing he'd tell the judge I promised him half the house, that he had sweat equity from priming one wall. Rachel listened and said, No writing, no deed, no dollar ever paid. Ohio requires promises in writing. Let him give that speech. 18 days until the hearing. My family came at me in waves. Wave 1, a baby shower in my house planned by my mother, hosted in rooms I was suing to get back. I ate cake in my own kitchen like a caterer. Wave 2, my uncle and the pastor sat me down for a healing conversation that was actually a proposal. I dropped the case. Derek stays 1 year rent-free. The family moves forward in grace. Wave 3 was Derek's wife in the hallway, hands on her belly. You'd really put a newborn on the street? That one landed. That night, I called my best friend. She asked, Walk me through the deal. What do you get? I stopped. You get to keep paying. That's the whole deal. The hearing was Tuesday. On Monday night, my mother knocked on my door. She sat on the small bed and spoke in her real voice. Drop it. Everything goes back to normal. Normal meant Sunday dinners, being at the hospital when my nephew was born. Normal was the thing I'd been buying installment by installment since I was 19. That's the choice. The family you wish you had versus the person you actually are. I took her hand. Mom, normal was me paying for a seat at a table you all owned. I'm done renting. She pulled her hand back. Then you'll sit in that courtroom alone.
She was almost right.
My mother didn't come. My brother did. He brought a speech. The courtroom was plain. A magistrate with silver hair moved through cases like a checkout line. When they called Thornton versus Thornton, we took our 2 tables. The magistrate asked her questions. Whose name is on the deed? Mine alone. Is there a lease?
No.
Has any rent ever been paid? Not a dollar. Were the notices properly served? Yes. Then Derek stood up and gave his speech. Family meaning something. Sweat equity. A sister with 2 incomes. The magistrate listened, then asked 4 questions. Do you have that promise in writing? Is your name on the deed? Have you paid anything? Do you contest proper notice? For nos, quieter each time. Judgment for the plaintiff. Move out ordered within 10 days. 90 seconds. That's what his empire came to. In the hallway, Derek called me a traitor. I waited and gave him back his words. You keep saying it's not stealing if it's family. The judge just gave it a different name. You taught me family keeps score. I'm just the first one who wrote it down. The law gave them 10 days. My parents used to. My brother used every hour. My parents closed on their condo that same week. The moving truck came Thursday. My mother directed the loading and delivered her exit line. I hope this house keeps you warm, Olivia. No hug. But my father stayed behind. He took his toolbox to the back gate that had screeched since March and oiled the hinges until it swung silent. Then he set his key and an envelope with $400 on the counter. For the utilities. Then the longest speech I ever heard him give. I watched my father do this to my sister Ruthie. Told myself I'd never sit that quiet. Turns out quiet is a thing you inherit.
I'm sorry.
I knew about the condo. I just didn't have the spine. He was gone before I could respond. My brother had 10 days and he barricaded himself in my master bedroom. He spent them telling the group chat I'd never go through with it. On day 10, a deputy knocked, checked the writ, and posted the notice. On set-out morning, a crew showed up. I'd asked about Mercy, so the baby things were set aside first. I didn't watch from the porch. I sat at my kitchen table and listened. Packing tape, boot steps, a bed frame coming down the stairs. His wife's father showed up and loaded her life into his pickup. The only thing I heard him say to Derek was, "Nobody took a thing from you. Get in the truck." They pulled out at 4 in the afternoon. That night, I heard my own refrigerator hum. People pay therapists for less than that sound. The locksmith came Saturday. I walked through my home like a stranger. Nail holes in the master bedroom. The ghost line of tape on the living room floor. One wall primed gray. I stood in the quiet and did the accounting. Not the legal fees or the utilities or the decades of bailouts. The real ledger. I'd spent 15 years paying dues to a club that told me the dues were love. Every rescue, every swallowed no, every check to buy one more month of belonging. That was rent. I'd paid faithfully. And the moment I stopped paying, they moved a better tenant into my room and called me selfish. They'd always kept score. I just refused to lose on purpose. I opened the windows. That night, I slept in my own bed behind a door with no lock, because it didn't need one anymore. My nephew was born the day after Thanksgiving. I mailed a savings bond and a note. "Congratulations, the door is not locked. Love, Olivia." No reply came. The utility bill dropped back to $310. My office became my office again, except for the gray wall I kept unpainted. Some mornings I look at it, and it does the work of a whole therapy session. 2 weeks before Christmas, someone knocked. My parents stood on the porch, my father holding his toolbox. "The window in the small bedroom sticks," he said. "Been meaning to get to it." My mother held a store-bought pie. It wasn't an apology. It was 2 people who had run out of victim stories, asking to come in. I let them in. Dad fixed the window. Mom set the table, without rearranging a single cabinet. We ate, careful and small and occasionally almost warm. At the door, my mother said quietly, "It's a good house, Olivia." I said, "I know, Mom." And I locked the door behind them. The lock was just a lock. There's a drawer where the new spare key sits, waiting for the day someone earns it back. It might wait years.
Here's what this taught me.
A family that only loves you when you're paying isn't loving you. It's billing you. The kindest thing you'll ever do is close the account and see who still shows up. That's my story. 1 red folder, 2 rounds of notices for names on a docket, and 1 spare key still waiting. If someone's temporary stay is erasing you, take this as your sign.
Put it in writing today.
Share this video with someone who needs the push. Drop a comment with your story.
Hit subscribe.
If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe to Zarabell Stories for more tales of boundaries and resilience. I'll see you in the next one.